Jonathan Kuminga benched by the Golden State Warriors. What that could mean for the trade front. Certainly, he can't be thrilled with that situation. Plus, the Miami Heat, some players available on the trade market, and could they be big game hunting? And a weird situation with Terry Rozier where Miami might actually have to make a trade just to find out if they can make a trade. We'll get into that too. Plus, Giannis Antetokounmpo, where does he want to land? Well, teams are already acting as though there's one place that he would like to be. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Donnie, we'll get to the Giannis stuff later, but the best way to deal with the problem is to pretend like it does not exist.
Is that what's kind of going on with the organization in the NBA right now?
That may indeed be what's going on.
Maybe multiple organizations, right?
Exactly. All right. But before we get to all that, let's talk about Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga benched last night by the Golden State Warriors. He did not play at all compared to everybody. It was a blowout win for the Warriors over the Chicago Bulls. So I guess in that sense, it was a win. And so Warriors fans can't complain. Kuminga can't complain and say, we needed him out there. Clearly they didn't. But a DNP after everything we went through over the summer, after the hot start to the season for Kuminga, since then his minutes have dwindled. He had the weird situation where he was hurt, but was he really hurt? And there was he was out of the starting lineup. What's really happening? Now his minutes per game have dropped. His production has dropped. And now he has been completely benched by Coach Steve Kerr. Donnie, January can't come soon enough for Jonathan Kuminga. He needs to be traded ASAP and get out of. And Golden State needs to move on from him too, because you can't have a player making that much money sitting on your bench.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jonathan's played in 3 games this month. He played a couple of days ago on Saturday, and he is 8 for 32 from the field in these 3 games.
Ooh.
He went 1 for 10 against Cleveland on the 6th. And I mean, if he's performing like that, I can understand why he's not playing. 4 for 12 the game before, 3 for 10 the game before that. It's very clearly not a good fit. And it's unfortunate because there was some promising outlook there at the start of the season, the way he was performing, making the reads he was making, shooting the ball. But it's not been good lately. And it's one of those situations where, like we've been saying for a while, you just need the split. You just need the split, and he'll be better elsewhere. They need to get back what they can for him, because there's no reason you should be at a point where you feel like you need to bench a $22.5 million player on your team.
Are the Warriors actually preserving his trade value he's been playing so poorly? Are they preserving his trade value by putting him on the bench?
I asked you that a while ago, and we kind of came to the consensus that teams are going to just, try to. Yeah. They're not going to trade for Kuminga this version. They're going to trade for what they think he could be in their system, right? So I don't know that it makes any difference, but what it does do is it probably pisses him off unless he doesn't want to play more. And at that point, I don't want to suggest that he's a problem in the locker room because I don't know him and the inner workings of the locker room, but I can imagine that could cause some issues just in terms of the fact he thinks he should be playing a certain amount and he's not, right? And this has been a multi-year issue, right? This isn't brand new. He's felt like this has happened to him a few times. And again, he's not blameless, I think, but ultimately I think these two sides need to just come to a separation here.
Well, and insult to injury, that game against the Cavs at the Warriors, they surprisingly they won that game. But when we look at and he played 22 minutes, and the next night against the Chicago Bulls, he doesn't play at all. Yeah. But Jonathan Kuminga, there wasn't like the guys in front of him were there. There was no Draymond Green that game. There was no Steph Curry. Normally it's, how do you slot him in with Dre and Steph and Jimmy, and how does all that work? There were other players, important players that were out. That should be the, okay, Kuminga, now's your time to shine. Go do your thing. Instead, he got a DNP in a game that Steph Curry and Draymond Green did not play. That's not a great sign. I do think teams will still have interest in him. How much will be determined, but reportedly one of the team, not a surprise because they had interest all summer, but the Sacramento Kings still has interest in trading for Jonathan Kuminga. Now, again, he's on that $22.5 million deal, team option for next year. But the expectation is any team that gets him would rip up the contract for next year and sign him to a new deal. That's what his agent and Kuminga himself will expect. If that's the case, should teams still have interest in Kuminga at this point and just believe that the Warriors are still misusing him?
Well, I mean, You know who he is, I think, ultimately. For better or worse, his qualities as a player, I think he has a long enough sample. He's still also, 23? You could expect him to get reasonably better.
Mm-hmm.
He still obviously feels like he's a player that should be an all-star at some point. I don't know if that's ever really going to materialize, but I do think that teams can see that he just doesn't fit with what Golden State wants to do because they run a very particular type of offense. And he's never really been able to fit into that, certainly with the other players around them.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had their own struggles just in general, right? It's not like it's just been purely him not fitting in. They've had some troubles with the way that they've been meshing out there, playing those non-Steph minutes, etc. And Jimmy has not been great this season, very up and down, as he's wont to do in the regular season anyway. But he made a huge, huge change to that team post-trade last year, and I haven't seen that so much from them this season. So it's not just him, and I do think teams are going to, again, trade for what they think he is ultimately. But certainly if you're a team trying to trade for him, or if you do have interest in him, you may be at a position of power and say, hey, this guy really is disgruntled. He's not played well. Maybe we can take an asset off of the table. That contract was designed to be ripped up. But last time we talked about that, I was like, well, there's also a possibility here where they may just say, screw all that. We're bringing you back, right? Because we didn't find a deal that we liked. And that would be terrible for all parties. But at the bare minimum, he is a 22.5 salary that I do think is movable and that they could get a player that fits better in there for that. The funny thing about yesterday's game also was they played against the Bulls, and they didn't even try to showcase him against the Bulls because they were another team that was rumored to be interested in Kuminga, right? And so, I think that's really interesting too. Because they should have, in my opinion, especially with the guys out and stuff, that's an easy Jonathan, go play 35 minutes a night game, right?
Go light it up. You want to get to the Bulls? Here's your audition game. Go, right? And instead they did not a great sign. By the way, right now, Jonathan Kuminga, according to Cleaning the Glass, when we look at his overall effectiveness, minus 9.6 points per 100 possessions for the Golden State Warriors when he is on the floor compared to off. Certainly not ideal. All right, but in any of these situations, Miami always gets into the mix in these trade conversations, whether or not they get a deal done. They may actually have a couple of really interesting players they're putting out there on the market, Andrew Wiggins being one of them. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Ever hear the Sleeper app? Here's a little secret. It's more than just a platform for season-long fantasy leagues. This year, millions of users enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but the app offers so much more. Live stats, real-time updates, and visualizations on all stats. A news feed, this is so important for me. You can get lightning-fast updates on your favorite players and teams. A real-time chat to allow you to engage with other users about individual plays and performances during the NFL and NBA seasons. So download the #1 sports app today. Experience it for yourself. When you use promo code Bulletin, you get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. And by the way, they do have a phenomenal promo going on right now as well. Free $20 entry. Go check that out. No deposit required. $20 entry for free. Go check them out. Use the link in the description down below, and that promo code is Bulletin. All right, and I made a few quick picks. I'm not even sure how I feel about them right now, Donnie. I go back and forth on these all the time, but using that code Bulletin, you get a 100% match on Sleeper up to $100. Free $20 entry. I did go Trey Murphy, more than 3.5 assists. I think that they rely on him so much offensively, and I do think they'll be able to score just enough there. Anthony Edwards, more than 28.5 points, even though he's going up against Phoenix. That's the one that I'm most concerned about because Phoenix's defense has been pretty good. Devin Vassell, more than 22.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And Wemby is not back yet. I think Vassell is going to be able to play pretty well against New Orleans himself. All right, everybody, but if you want to get in on it, as always, we appreciate it when you guys help support the companies that support us. So click the link in the description down below. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Miami Heat and a interesting situation there that was brought up by Jake Fisher. And that is essentially that we've got both Andrew Wiggins and Tyler Hero, because Tyler Hero didn't come to terms on a contract extension with them, potentially being available. And they will, of course, be in the Giannis hunt. We'll talk about that in just a moment here. But Miami, if they've got Wiggins, Tyler Hero, may be available in, again, as Fisher notes, has to be in the right deal. They each have 1 season left on their contract. Plus, if they do finally decide they were not in the Kevin Durant trade, but decide they were willing to part with Kella Ware, maybe Jaime Jaquez, I don't know. Donnie, could Miami be a sneaky team to get involved in a Giannis trade, maybe in a Jonathan Kuminga trade, just about anybody else that's out there?
They've been a sneaky team for the last 4 years or so, but they just
right?
haven't pulled the trigger, right?
They want a Dame, they want a KD, but the reporting for Jake Fisher was that essentially Miami has withheld their best offers for Dame, for Kevin Durant, in the hopes that at some point a top level guy like a Giannis would become available. And now if Giannis really is available, is that the point where they go, okay, Kella Ware, fine, let's go?
Yeah, that's been the reporting each time one of these guys has been brought up as well, because the offers that are leaked about what the Heat were offering are always like, why wouldn't they give up this guy? Why would they give up that? Right. So yeah, with that context in mind, yeah, they could be a team that I do think would be a good destination for a number of players, and I could totally see Giannis playing there as well. I think he'd be pretty happy if he were to wind up in Miami. I think that's an organization that has a history, and Spo's one of the best, if not flat out the best coach in the NBA. He's a guy that's going to really put him in positions to be successful and to succeed there. And so I think that would be a really good fit for him. They would need to, I think, any team he goes to is going to need to really overhaul the roster to make it to where Giannis has the space he requires to be able to play a certain way. And you may be able to get more buy-in from Giannis, I think, in Miami than he has shown in Milwaukee, because he's been reluctant to set screens, things like that. Maybe in Miami they get that from him, and he takes his game to another level as like a co-star or something like that. But certainly they could be a team, because they've been reluctant to do so, like we were just talking about, for a number of years.
Yeah, exactly. It's something where I don't think they move on from Bam Adebayo.
Oh, of course not.
But they could put together a competitive package if Wiggins, not that he's the primary driver there, but Tyler Hero is available. If you are willing to put Kella Ware and Jaime Jaquez in, and then we're talking draft capital.
But does Milwaukee want that though? Because this is the same thing I was saying with Reeves though. Why do you want these guys that are win now pieces? I mean, I can understand the idea that you don't want to gut your roster and stay competitive for a little bit. Maybe be a plucky team that's a play-in team or whatever, but do you genuinely want that, right?
I mean, they don't have their own draft capital. That's part of the problem for Milwaukee. Is really, because really what they need to do in a situation like this is burn it down. And that means trade Miles Turner after you do a Giannis trade, right? And maybe this happens this summer. Maybe it's not by the trade deadline this year, but you move on from Miles Turner. You move on from as many of the Kuzmas and Gary Trent Jr.'s and all those guys in the world. You hang on to like a Ryan Rollins and some players like that, and then you build and move forward. But the challenge is, in that scenario, normally you would be reliant on your draft picks to ultimately build you back up within the next few years. They don't have those. Yeah. So that's the hard part for Milwaukee. Could they just say, you know what, give us a bunch of win now pieces, because losing doesn't help us anyway, and we'll be an okay team that can bring in a little bit of playoff revenue, and we'll be good buddies with the Chicago Bulls because we'll have the same strategy.
Yeah, that's definitely possible, I think, for them. It's unfortunate that, and so with that being the case, maybe they try to target their own draft picks back in that situation. Right? Maybe they try to rope in a third team or something in a Giannis deal to try to get back some of their picks. But if I'm a team that's got those picks, if they trade Giannis, those become super valuable to me. I'm going to hold on to those for dear life unless I get something really valuable in return, like Giannis himself, right?
Unless you're the team that's getting.
Yeah. So maybe you could get those in a situation where you're trading off Turner or something. I don't know.
Now, they do have, technically, Atlanta could get their pick, but only if their pick this year, if their pick is worse than the Pelicans pick. So there's a swap there on this year's pick. And New Orleans gets the less favorable of the two. So Milwaukee's pick is going to go either to New Orleans. This year is either going to go to New Orleans or to Atlanta. Their 2027 first round pick also goes to New Orleans or Atlanta. So if you are the Hawks, and you're talking about a Giannis trade, and you could offer what right now, I believe, I'll double check and see if it's changed. But yeah, right now it would be, if the draft stayed chalk, would be the number 1 overall pick going to the Hawks. Like the Hawks are a sneaky, and that's the Pelicans pick, because remember, the Hawks have the better of the Pelicans pick and the Bucks pick. That's the trade that they got with the Pelicans last year, the Derek Queen trade. But if you're the Hawks, now you could say, hey, we'll give you not your pick back necessarily, because your pick's probably going to be worse. We'll give you an even better pick. We'll give you the Pelicans pick. We'll give you this pick swap for Giannis. We'll give you what could be the number 1 pick in this draft. Plus, I don't know, Trae Young, plus maybe other future draft capital. If I'm Milwaukee, I'd be saying like, all right, let's talk Jalen Johnson plus the pick, plus, sure. Right? Like that's what I'm looking for. But like, I think the Hawks are a sneaky team that could get into the mix. Now, again, Miami's another team that will get in on it. Golden State will be like, hey, Bucks, can we interest you in a shiny Jonathan Kuminga? Pay no attention that he's sitting on our bench right now. We're going to interest you in this. A lot of teams will get involved. And of course, and we'll talk about in a minute, the New York Knicks will also try to get involved in a Giannis sweepstakes.
Yeah. Does Giannis have the pull to decide where he goes in the situation?
I think so. I think he's going to have, because the Bucks aren't going to want to send him anywhere that he doesn't want to go. And because he has free agency now, not this summer, but the summer after 2027 summer, he can be a free agent. So any team, whether it's now or over the summer, that's trading for him, let's say Giannis doesn't want to be an Atlanta Hawk, he could say, yeah, you guys can trade for me like Toronto did with Kawhi. You can do that. But I'm telling you right now, I will leave in next summer. And like Toronto did with Kawhi, they may say, okay, well, we think we're going to convince you. And if not, we're still happy to have you for a year or a year and a half or whatever. Maybe a team does that, but it's unlikely. Typically, if a player says, hey, you could trade for me, but as soon as I'm a free agent, I'm out, teams will not want to trade for that player anymore. So he does have control here.
Yeah.
Some.
Extremely ballsy move by Toronto, by the way. But I think that's worked. A little bit of it did. I think that's a little bit of a different situation, because if everything is even and the Hawks, for example, pull this trade off and win the chip, I think he'd stay. With Kawhi, he was never going to stay. Like, I didn't think he would ever stay, and they did a bunch of things for him to try to make it work, and he still wouldn't stay because he just didn't want to be there, right? He didn't want to be there from the jump. So I think it's a little bit different. I think Giannis would stay in that situation, but that's, a lot to ask, winning a chip in a year and a half, assuming you were able to pull that off now.
The other piece to maybe Miami getting involved, whether it's Giannis or anybody else, look at Terry Rozier. He's got $26 million expiring salary, right? But with the whole investigation, nobody knows like what's going to happen with that. According to Jake Fisher, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. So according to Jake Fisher, Miami would first need to agree to a trade in principle that includes Rozier's salary just to generate an official ruling from the NBA about whether the trade is legal or not. So Miami does not know whether the NBA will allow them to trade Terry Rozier right now. The NBA will not give them an official ruling and not say they might. The NBA could void Terry Rozier's contract. We don't know what's going to happen with that. But Miami, I think, would prefer to use him as a trade chip, as an expiring $26 million contract. But they can't get the NBA to tell them whether or not they can actually trade him, or whether the NBA would block the trade and say no, because of the investigation, you can't trade him. And the only way they can find out is to trade him. How insane is that? The only way to know whether or not you can trade Terry Rozier is to trade Terry Rozier and just see if anybody stops you. That's like Donnie posting no speed limit signs on the highway, and then you just keep driving and go, well, let's try 150 miles an hour and see if anybody pulls us over, and then I guess we'll know. Like, that's all they can do.
That doesn't even make any sense to me.
No.
Like how can they not be told, yes, you can pull this trade off, or no? But if they, so like say they ask today, the NBA says, no, we can't tell you until you make a trade. Okay, well, here's a trade. So what's the answer? Oh, actually, you know what? Here's the answer. Yes or no. Then why couldn't you tell me that an hour ago? Like, what changed? Like, I don't understand that. So to me, it's just overall really stupid. It's some semantic stuff. They're trying to, I guess, lean on the rule book with this, and that's a hyper specific scenario that we'll probably never really see again. I mean, the way things are going, maybe we'll see it again at this point because there's just stuff happening. But it's probably something we haven't seen really so much of before, and it's a really unfortunate situation being if you're the Miami Heat, because that's a lot of salary that you could put in for matching reasons, right? And a team's not acquiring him. Certainly, a team trading for a star player anywhere or trading a star player is not acquiring him to be a player. They're just getting that $26 million expiring with all those other incentives on there, right? So that being said, it's really unfortunate for them to have him on the roster. And if they avoid that salary, I think they're the big losers in all this because they traded for him and he's just gone. Like the asset's just gone. The salary's just gone.
And that's where Miami can be annoyed at why weren't we informed when we traded for him that this was out there? Like, what, should the Charlotte Hornets have said something?
Yeah.
I mean, did
they sell a lemon? Anything. They're not telling anybody a thing.
No. I mean, if he comes off the books, yeah, it gives them more flexibility under the first apron, I guess. It gives them some, but it's not like they suddenly, especially there's not free agents to sign right now anyway. So
I'd rather have the money to move. But Charlotte is not telling anybody a damn thing. They're keeping everything.
Yeah, they will not say anything to anybody about it. Nope. We will just not comment on that whole, well, pun intended, hornet's nest there. All right. So the last thing here, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Speaking of not commenting, the Bucks are just acting as though everything is fine with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And what? People are talking Giannis trades. They're crazy. We have no idea why anybody would be talking about that. We love Giannis. Giannis loves Milwaukee. Everything is just fine. Meanwhile, the building behind them is burning. I guess, like, what else are they supposed to do? Like, say, oh, yeah, the bidding. But as of right now, they've given no indication to teams whether or not they're actually accepting offers on Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I would imagine that's going to change by the trade deadline. But they still need Giannis to, like, tell them, like, officially, no, I really actually want out. And, like, it's kind of going to take Giannis making a stink here, I think. And he doesn't want to do that. So it's just kind of drawing out.
Yeah, it's very obvious he doesn't want to come out and just be the bad guy and say, hey, trade me. Like, I'm done. Just trade me.
Right.
But I'd have to imagine that even if he doesn't come out and publicly say that, they know where his head is at. I would imagine. Right. And it's been kind of up and down. This is where, like, it's all weird because why do you pull that trade if you don't think he's going to stay long term for Turner and get all that dead salary on your books? There was a report a couple of days ago that he was pretty annoyed that they did that. Actually, did you see that?
Donnie,
this
is you're in a rocky relationship with your girl, so you get her name tattooed on you. That's what the Bucks did, right? And that's the Dame
right there.
That's the Dame, yeah, Matt the Optimus Peralta. That's the Dame Lillard dead money sitting on their books. That is the girl's name tattooed on their body for the next 5 years until they get laser removal.
Yeah, like I don't understand why you would do that if you weren't in lockstep with him. And it's like, okay, well, it seems like they are in lockstep because, again, why would you do that unless you're just absolutely desperate, right? In which case I can understand because you don't get Giannis very often. And the last time they had a Giannis, it was what, Kareem? Like you don't get these guys very often. And so in this case, I'd have to imagine they know where his head's at. They'd have to know that if he does actually want to get traded, they would have to know that. And they know his destination is, above all else, they knew this back in the summer, right? Because we found out that this was a big thing and he was potentially interested in going to New York. Like that doesn't just come out if that's not something you've had talks about.
Right? And he still is, reportedly. And it's in part because, according to Jake Fisher, it's in part because the Knicks have such a rowdy fan base.
Yeah,
that he likens it to the crowds in Europe.
Yeah, and there's that little perk of his family now, living back in Greece, and he can just fly back.
The only straight flight. Yep.
So like, there's a lot of noise there, right? And so like, this is not, I don't think, new. And so for the Bucks to try to handle it this way, I understand it because you're trying to keep everything in house, figure things out privately instead of publicly. And if you're a doc, I guess you're saying only one of two things you can say: hey, he doesn't want to trade, or hey, he does want to trade, and just invite more media scrutiny, I guess. And so I understand it from that perspective. But the more this kind of looms over this team, I don't think it's a good thing. I think they need to reach a point where they're either going to make that move or just stick it out. But either way, I would love for him to stay in Milwaukee because we don't have enough guys doing that in this era. But it just kind of feels like the writing's on the wall, man. Like if it's not here, maybe in the summer. I just don't see him signing another deal. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. And I still think Giannis is on the move. It may be by the summertime, but this could wind up
Really
being
quick.
last year we got Luka at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
This year could be Giannis.
Yeah, real quick, I got to say, like, for Giannis, I just will never forget those comments, man. He's had a lot of comments over the years, but him this summer being like, yeah, maybe I'll change my mind. It's just like, man, that's scathing to me. Like, and maybe it could be out of context, fine, whatever. But he's had too many of those to where it's like he cares about winning. He doesn't really, he like loves Milwaukee. That's one thing. Fine. That's perfectly fine. But he cares about winning above all else. He says his career doesn't feel fulfilled if he doesn't win another championship. Like, that's a lot and a lot of pressure. And I've seen people say he does those things, says these things to keep pressure on the organization, you know, similar to how like LeBron would do back in his Cleveland days, which is constantly keep pressure on the organization to make win now moves, etc. And that's fine and all, but I think Giannis is dead serious about this. Like, if you're not able to do anything, then he's just going to move on. And it's unfortunate for the Bucks in this case, because like I said, you don't get these guys often, but they burned every single bridge. That's why that Turner Dame thing was so ridiculous, because it is the last resort of all last resorts. So, and it still wasn't enough, right? So I just think that it's a tough situation to be in all around.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I hope things work out for Milwaukee, but I just don't see how they turn this team into the championship contender Giannis wants it to be. And if that's the case, we're just prolonging what is a inevitable breakup. It seems to be coming. And then laser surgery for the Bucks to get the girl's name removed. The tattoo.
They got 4 years. Don't worry, they'll wait. Another 4 years after.
That's 4 years. Yep. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Please make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications as well. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.